Hello and welcome to another edition of Luminar Coffee Break. I'm your host, Vanelli. Now, joining me today for the Friday wrap-up is my co-host, Angela Andrieux. Hello, Angela.
Hey, hello, Vanelli. Hello, everyone. So glad to be with you this Friday.
I can't believe it's
Hope
Friday
you're doing
already.
well.
I can't believe it's
Huh?
Friday already.
I can. It's been a long week. For some reason, this week seemed like, Tuesday should have been Friday, but
Wow.
not for any bad reason. It's just one of those weeks that seemed really long.
All right, you want to tell everyone what we're working on today?
Sure. Well, so the episodes that I did for you earlier this week were all about color. Our first one was selective color, where I took an image and brought out the beautiful red of a woman's dress in a black and white landscape. Really made the subject come alive. And in the other image, it was of a model in cherry blossoms and how to enhance that color without going over the top. And I gave you a few techniques so you can watch during your processing to make sure you haven't taken it too far. And if you do, what to do when that happens. And Vanelli, I think you had for us today.
Yeah, so
Um,
today I have how to improve smartphone photos. And I used one of the pictures I did from Egypt. And then the secrets on getting your image ready to send to a print lab. Now, those same concepts can be used if you want to print in home. I think you and I talked about this. You do a lot of printing outside of your home, right?
Well, I do both. I have a Canon Pixma Pro 100 printer that I use for anything up to a 13 by 19. And then anything larger or on specific materials, I send out to a lab. So it just depends on what I'm printing and for who, which avenue I go with.
Gotcha. All right, now we're going to go through some of your favorite print labs and some of mine. And for our European friends, we're going to come up with a list to help you guys out also. All right, Angela, how about you take it away? I'll share your screen.
All right. Well, you guys
I'd
should be
love to
seeing
see
my
it.
Luminar, and I've got this beautiful image with the black and white landscape and the woman in the red dress. And selective color is one of those techniques that people either love or hate. I happen to love it, but really my favorite ones are always with a pop of red in the black and white. So this image really called to me when I first saw it. Let me go ahead and show you the before. So you can see it's a cool photo. But by turning it into selective color, bringing out that red, and we even popped in a new sky for some texture towards the top of the image, it really made this image come alive. Now to do this, we went over into our edit tab, and I'm going to start over here in our essentials. We went down to black and white. We converted it to black and white, and then we went over to this saturation tab, and you can see that I've pulled the red saturation up. Now, when I first did this, it pulled up all of the red tones in the image, and I can go back in my history and show that to you. If I go back here and pull back just to that step, you can see there's some other reds bleeding through in those rocks. So we added our sky next, and then we went into our local adjustments and went through the basic local adjustments here and used our masking brushes to remove the rest of the color. So let me go back to my history. I'm going to go ahead and pop back up to the top so you can see the final result and show you that local masking that I did. This first one was to remove that extra red around the image. So if I turn that off and then back on again, you can see that that removed any extraneous color that had bled through because it was part of those red tones. And then this other local masking brush that I did was to darken up the foreground. I used a gradient. You turn that off, you can see that brightens up the foreground. And I really didn't think the foreground did a whole lot other than adds a little bit of texture that gives some movement to our image. So I didn't want to take it away and crop it out, but I wanted to darken it down because the foreground obviously is not my subject. So I think that made this image really come alive. I finished it off with a nice subtle vignette, nice and soft, to just, again, draw your eye to the subject. So what do you guys think about that? What do you think, Vanelli?
Oh, I like it. That came out really good. I've always loved that image. I love the red dress in there.
Yes.
In that area. It's like,
Yeah,
it just adds that extra excitement to it. So,
absolutely.
yep. And keep in mind, please, if you have questions, drop them into the chat and we'll try to answer them before we end with the show. Obviously, when we do our Zoom sessions on AI Insiders, it's one-on-one interactive, so it's much easier than on Facebook or on YouTube, but still drop it in. Hey, Angela, Ev is here. Hello, Ev. Glad to see you.
Hey, good
And of
to
course,
see
we have
you.
our usual crew. We love seeing all of them coming in. And please, the producers love it if you hit that thumbs up. So show us a little bit of love there. All right. So let me get going with the cell phone images. So a smartphone photo, keep in mind, images nowadays taking with our smartphones. I mean, look at look at the size of these. 4,032 by 22, 68 pixels. And I'll show you later on how large we could actually print these. But you're looking easily at an 8 by 10. And these images are coming out from our phones, are coming out pretty remarkable. All right, so you know that I came back from Egypt. And Angela, like I mentioned before, honestly, I'm walking through and I'm looking at all this beautiful landscape, and all I think about is, oh wow, palm trees, just like Florida. Oh wow, a little gecko running around, just like Florida. Big ocean, just like Florida. So the part that I was at the resort didn't really resemble Egypt until we went outside of the resort. Oh, and then it was just absolutely just amazing. But here, I didn't whip out my camera. Instead, I used my cell phone walking to some of the places we were going. So these I consider as reference photos. You know, it's a place to say, hey, this is where I was at this time in my life. So let me get back to this one. I'm going to go to the history palette or panel, and I want to reset it. So here's the original image, and if you noticed, it was shot at f/.22, and you're looking at a 0.22 millimeter lens, which means look at all of that distortion. So, and the only way for me to get rid of that distortion in camera was if I backed way the heck up and I photographed it like this, but then I didn't really get what I wanted. So let's enhance this one here first. Real quick, I came over, and I can't stress enough the importance of templates. This is a great starting point. From here, we just come through, start selecting one, and once you get one that you absolutely love, oh, I like this one. Once you get the one you absolutely love, you can save it as one of your favorites, or you can continue and edit further. Now, here, it's done except for I do want to work with the perspective here. So using Composition AI, I just want to straighten it up a bit. And there it is. So we went from this, let me commit it. We went from this to this in just a very, very short time. And now my cell phone photo is looking better. While I was on the little trip here, what I could have done was exported this back to my Google Drive and then sent them out to Facebook or any of my social media sites to show people. This I have no problem showing. This I wouldn't want on my Facebook profile or my Facebook stories. So a real quick edit inside Luminar gave me this right here. So there you go, Angela.
Very nice. It's always really cool to see how no matter what camera you have with you, whether it's a cell phone or, you know, a nice expensive mirrorless, DSLR, whatever it is you're shooting with, no matter what camera you have with you, you can improve them with good software. And in this case, Luminar AI does a fabulous job. And I love Composition AI, how it easily straightens out those verticals. It's so nice.
Awesome. All right. And just out of curiosity for those watching now, how many of you just are using your cell phone? I use it a lot as a reference. Like if I go somewhere, I'll take shots in the beginning just to kind of get a feel of what I'm looking for. And then now I have a reference of what I'm doing, not to mention the fact it also has GPS. So I could put that into my files. Well, this is where I was when I took these photos. So, all right,
nice.
What do you have for us now?
So the next image I have is a beautiful image of a woman in cherry blossoms. Let me show you the before. It's a very nice photo, but with a few quick edits, I was able to really bring out kind of a warm afternoon glow, pop the color of those cherry blossoms, and make this image come alive. So here's the before. It's a nice photo, but her face is kind of blocked up in the shadows and the white balance feels like it's a little bit off. And I was able to get to this result with very few steps. So the point of this image was to show you how to work with color. And by using a template, I kind of shortcutted a few things, but I wanted to point out a couple of things that you can do as you're going along in order to make sure you haven't taken it over the top. So let me go back to my history here. I'm going to go back into the edit view, down to the history tab, and scroll down to the bottom. And so here's our original. There we go. Let that load up. And I added a template. This is one that came out of a collection from Luminar X. And for those of you who don't know, Luminar X is an optional membership add-on to Luminar AI where you can get monthly deliveries of assets such as skies and templates and other cool stuff. So this is a template that I got out of one of those collections, and it immediately improved this image in almost every single way that I wanted it to. Now, the next thing I did was crop it because I felt like that sky up there in the corner was a little distracting, and there was a little something happening down in the bottom left that wasn't helping us. I went through the different edits that the template applied and then made a few enhancements as I went along. Now, one of the things that I encourage you to do to watch your color to make sure that you're getting the results that you want without going overboard is make use of this visibility icon up here in the upper right. This will turn you back to your original and then back, and you can see how far you've come. And it's a really great way to gauge how far your edits have come along. So what I'm going to do now is go back up here to the top, back to my original, or back to my edit, and we can go over here to the different tabs and see which tools were used. So in this case, it used Enhance AI. We can turn that off and then back on again to see what it did. That wasn't such a huge change. It's at a very low amount. Color, it did bring up our vibrance and saturation a little bit. And we could turn that off. Let that think for a second. And you can see it did mute it down a little bit. You can turn it back on. And that's one great way also to see when you go through individual tools, turn them off and back on again to see what the effect was. Sometimes you can find that with that individual tool, you went overboard and then pull it back a little bit or go, you know what? I think it needs a little bit more. It's a really great way to keep you kind of balanced and grounded as you're going through those edits so you don't take them too far and you keep them looking realistic while making them still look amazing. Another thing that I went and did to kind of touch up this template was into my creative here, I used our Mystical and Glow. And both of these tools have some colorization options that I often use but didn't work well in this image. So I don't know if you noticed back over here when we were in our essentials, landscape is also checked off here. It's got the little dot. If you close out of that, you see it's got a dot by it, means that it's being used. So we open that up, we see it has golden hour. If we turn this off, that thing for a second, there we go. You can see that it's adding a kind of nice warm glow. Now, any other filter that you add that also has that warmth can impact the overall result and maybe take it a little bit too far. So when I'm over here in creative and I go into mystical, I often click down into colorize and warm up that mystical amount. In this instance, when I did that, I can go ahead and pull that up a little bit. It doesn't look too bad, but if I go ahead and turn that off and then back on again, I don't think that extra warmth is doing me any favors. So I can go ahead, double click on the handle and reset it and bring it back to where I was. So make sure you make use of that visibility icon for the overall. And then to make sure you turn those tools on and off to see how much of an effect it really had. Because each one of these steps is cumulative and builds off of every other step that you've taken. Once you're finished and you have your edits done, you take a look at that before and after. You can always go down to the bottom right and pull back on the overall sliders amount, and this will pull back on every effect that you made. So if you feel like you got it really close to right, but it's just a tiny bit too much, you can pull that back to, let's say, around 75 to 80%. And most of the times, for me anyway, that's darn near perfect. So I hope those tips help you in getting really great color and getting it to where you want it to go without going over the top.
I like that. Yeah, and I like the ending tip again, because it's funny because you and I, we both know, not so much in Insiders, but on YouTube, if we do an edit, somebody will always comment, oh God, you went way over the top. And then if we don't go over the top, oh my God, I could barely see a change. So here is a great way to say, okay, well look, here it is at 100%, and now let's add salt or pepper, the seasoning to your taste. If you feel it's too much, dial it back. If you feel it's just right, leave it right where it's at. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, Julie had a question. I'm going to
Sure.
pull it up on the screen.
All right.
When you choose a template and click to see what it does, then click another one just to show it. Once you click on that, does it build upon each other?
No, it does not. When you click on a template, it overwrites whatever settings you had before. So if you were to go into the edit tab, make a few adjustments, and then go back to templates and add a template, it's going to overwrite all of those changes that you just made. So I recommend using a template first, figuring out kind of the look and direction you want to go, and then going into the edit tab to refine it.
Oh, great. Yep, then that's my suggestion too. Which, let me show you my next. Here's this one right here. That's your screen. Here's my screen. There we go. So here's my great nephew Owen and little Jovi. So the the original image is this. Now, if we analyze it, I have no problem showing people that yes, after all these years, I still make mistakes. I photographed this with a D810, a very heavy camera with a battery grip. A 200 millimeter lens, Nikon, heavy, long. And look at this, I shot it at 1/140th of a second, handheld. So that's telling you, I know I had an aperture priority. So by having an aperture priority, it dictated what the shutter speed was gonna be. And I wasn't quite used to the New York light like I am in Florida. And I'm snapping away, and I realized, in fact, this was 1,800 hours, or I'm sorry, 1,400 hours, right? Nope, 18. So military time, that's you, Angela.
6 o'clock.
Okay, so at 6 o'clock New York time, the light is a lot different from here in Florida. What I should have done was put it in auto ISO to let my ISO bump itself up above at least 1/160th to 1/125th of a second, holding it at 200 millimeter lens. Really, I could have shot that up for a shutter speed of 250th of a second. Either way, the shutter speed here was so slow that you could definitely see the clarity is the sharpness of the image isn't there. So when printing this, we can hide. I hit it. Here it is. I hid it within a creative type look. And here's the templates. We were talking about this with Julie. So Julie, if I change the template, let's say, here we are, which I actually like this from the black and white to saturation. I like this one a lot. So once I changed it, notice everything was changed to just this template. So any settings I had before with, let's say, the matte filter or the matte tool, it's been replaced with whatever this template suggested. All right? So now, here's what we got to figure out. How big do we want to print this? Well, I mentioned earlier that this is 5520 by 3680. So there's a little cropping involved. Looking at it, let's see, edit, composition. Yep, sure enough, there it is, a 5:7 crop. So even at that cropping size, I still have a lot of pixels to deal with. Well, to help us understand that, here's an article that I wrote a while back, and you could download this, and if you just type in luminar.tips/print sizes. Then it'll take you here to this photo focus article I wrote. How many megapixels do I need for printing? Now, the article gives you step-by-step on calculating the megapixels you need for a high-quality print is 300 pixels per inch, not DPI, dots per inch, by the width times 300 by the height divided by 1 million, and that tells you what the megapixels are and how many megapixels you need to print. But let's just come down here. You can read all that on your own. Here it is. Let's calculate the largest size I can print at 300 pixels per inch. Now, as I mentioned this before, in the old days, 300 DPI was the standard, for laser printers. And if you notice with the Photoshop and with a lot of the images, 240 is the default PPI size. That's because the printers that we were using typically were native to 720. So I'm going to pull up my calculator here. So if we had 240 plus 240 plus another 240, it came out to an even 720. So all of those pixels are being used in the printer. If we did 300 pixels per inch, plus another 300, plus another, let's say, another 300, well, now that's 900. So you subtract the 720, somewhere along the line, it threw out 180 pixels. All right? So that's where they were very relevant on why they chose 240. I talked to Jeff Shuey, who's like the guru when it comes to printing. That whole theory is thrown out the window now. The printers are so sophisticated nowadays that it doesn't matter what you set the DPI at, it'll take care of it. All right? So let's just stick with 300 because that's what most print companies are recommending. So if we do the math that we just did here, we go back. Here we go. Info 5520 times 300. So, 5520 times or divided by, right? Nope, divided by. So I want to divide that by instead of times it. 300. I get printed at 18.4 inches. 18. Now, for that particular image, I don't want to print it to that size because I know it's not as sharp as it should be. So we have more than enough megapixels to print this at a good quality size at a 5x7. So if you ever wonder what's the maximum size you can print, just do that little formula change right here. Take your megapixels, divide it by 300, and that gives you your inches. And then this will tell you that's the largest you can print at that particular size. All right? Now, Angela, I'm going to come back to us for a moment because what I didn't pull up was the different printing labs that we chose. What were the ones that you liked?
So for here in the US, if you're wanting to print really big and you're wanting to do like the acrylic overlays over photo paper, really modern presentation, I love Bumblejacks, bumblejax.com. And they do phenomenal work. Their customer service is the best. And they will actually, if you're not sure if your picture is big enough to print at a certain size, you can send them the file and they will tell you, which is really nice when you're wanting to print really, really large. And I'm talking, 48 by 72 large, and see if your picture can translate to that. So they're awesome. I love them. If I'm wanting to print on canvas and it's very economical, go to CG Pro Prints. They do phenomenal work for exceptionally reasonable prices. Their canvases are quite well made. Everything I've had printed with them, it looks beautiful. So I highly recommend them as well. And they're geared to servicing photographers. They're not, I think the general public can order from them. You don't have to have any special license or anything to order, but they are meant to be resold. So that's why their prices are so very reasonable. So go to CG Pro Prints for your canvas.
Awesome.
And they do other things besides canvas as well. And then for everything else, and this is a good one for no matter where you are in the world, they ship internationally, is Whitewall. Whitewall is a company based in Germany. They ship internationally. Their shipping prices are very reasonable and their quality is exceptional. So those are my top 3 picks.
Oh, great. Yeah, now on mine, Angela, what I did here was I used MPIC Pro, and Miller Labs. Let me show you these 3. So, and John, thank you. John said I was coming off a little soft. John, let me know, how does that sound now if I'm coming in a little bit louder? Okay, so the different, Miller Lab actually owns Miller Lab, MPIC and MPIC Pro. So what are the three differences? And this is again for our US team. MPIC Pro is for the pro consumer. So that's for photographers that are professional photographers, but you're not doing huge, large volumes. And the benefit behind that one, it's a little bit cheaper, and you get second-day shipping. Whereas MPIC is strictly for the consumer. You can send your clients there, whatever you want, but that's strictly for the consumer. Miller Lab is really cool. They deal in high volume printing. And the printing that they deal with is typically for like schools, like, you know, the school photos where all the photos look identical, except the difference is the subject. So they're called step and repeats. And that's when you would use Miller Lab. Now, I like, a lot of times, I'll send my stuff off to SmugMug or to, let me pull it up for you here. I'll export it over here to SmugMug when I don't feel like dealing with the printing, but I want to give my family a chance that they can buy coffee mugs, blankets, prints, or whatever. I'll upload the images on SmugMug and then give them a code, and then they can purchase it at the cost that I would purchase it. The difference is, of course, shipping and handling is a lot more expensive. And then the other one I showed was Shutterfly. Now, the reason why Shutterfly made my list is you could print, I believe, up to 100 4x6 prints for free. And you'd wonder, well, how do they get away with that? It's a price lead. I got excited, I did it, got online, and I noticed a couple of coffee mugs that I know my nieces would love. I saw a blanket I knew my sister would like. $85 later, I realized, oh, that's how they're making their money, by giving away 4x6 prints to get people onto their site to put those prints onto other merchandise. And it worked. They got me sold on it. Now, the trick with Shutterfly is you could do all your ordering and getting it ready online on your desktop, but you have to complete the order on your mobile phone. And that's when you'll get those special deals. So, and again, Angela, I know we didn't do a whole lot for our friends overseas on that. That's something we'll look into. So those are my print ones. And when we print these off, keep in mind, a lot of them are asking for sRGB, your profile. In fact, let me get back to that. So when I do send this off and I save it to the disk, I like to send it as a JPEG just to keep the file size low. And of course, actual size. I still like the color space Adobe RGB. A lot of places are asking for sRGB because they're dealing with the mass society. They're dealing with the general public that don't know a whole lot about color space. And they figured they'd rather have sRGB because it's more compatible, and then they would tweak the color on their own. But I like sending it as an Adobe RGB, 240 for the resolution, and the quality size around 75. And yes, at this point here, I do like to add like a little medium amount of sharpening, just a little extra oomph. So when I send it off to them, it'll print a lot clearer. All right. So those are some of the settings. The best way to do this, and I'm sure you've done this, Angela, is you send in a couple prints, and then your print lab, for testing, your print lab will send them back on the different types of paper that they have. And then from there, with the different types of paper, you can decide what is your image, how does this image look on pearl, on metallic? How does it look on like a fine art rag paper? And then from there, you can decide when you're going to use those types of papers for which images, and how you want to proceed from there. and plus you'll be able to see the quality.
Yep.
So, did you notice that, Angela? The different quality of paper?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's one thing I want to point out with MPix. You had, MPix and MPix Pro. It's been a while since I've used them. Also a great company. I have no issue with them. But with MPix Pro, I believe you had additional paper types that you could choose from that weren't available to the general consumer on regular MPix. So if you're wanting to experiment with some different paper types beyond just, a luster, a glossy, or a matte, check out MPix Pro, because I think they have some fine art papers and some other, some papers that are geared towards black and white and other things that are really beautiful. They're pricier, but if you're going for fine art and you're wanting to be selling your work, it's worth looking into those archival papers, and the results are beautiful.
That's good to hear. Now, Karen made a comment. Let's see. Why not quality 100? Oh, okay. That's a good question. I was wondering where, I thought you meant pixels per inch, but I realized I did the same thing, the quality at 100, and it just makes the image size a lot larger, and the difference in it is not that great if you're printing small. Now, if I'm going to print a huge, 3 foot by 4 foot image, then, and I'm glad you brought that up, thank you, I would bring it to 100%. So it's not to mention the fact, let's say if I were to create a billboard, I would print a billboard at 72 DPI, because it's so far away, you're never going to see the quality of it. You're not going to go all the way up to it, climb the ladder, and look at it in detail. You're looking at it from, 700-800 yards. I mean, you're quite a distance away from it. So they can get away with lower quality. So depending on the distance and the size, 75 is generally a good starting point. If you're going to print huge prints, crank it up to 100. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that makes absolute sense. And another thing to take into consideration is that amount of sharpening. So if your picture is huge and you're meant to be standing 6-10 feet back, or even better on a billboard, you need to definitely crank up the sharpening higher. Whereas if you're looking at it up close and you're within 2 feet of an image, you're going to notice if there's a halo around those edges because of over sharpening. Whereas if it's something huge, far back, you're not going to see that.
Well, that's good to hear. Awesome. Well, guys, I hope that helped you tremendously. And again, please, if you have questions, always leave them in the chat. We're not always able to answer them on YouTube like this live because of the lag. However, we tend to go back and we try to answer as many questions as we can. And if you like these episodes, please give it a thumbs up. Show the producers how much you appreciate it. And please keep those comments coming.
Yes.
All right? Awesome.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And we're so glad you're able to join us on this Friday afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you guys in the next coffee break. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Bye, everyone.